Hey folks, it's Joey here. I just came back from a screening of Thor, The Dark World, the new Marvel Cinematic Universe movie. Just gonna talk about it for a bit. I saw it as a 8 p.m. Thursday night screening. I like that they do that now. It's just so much easier, especially when you have these movies that are released in November. It's so much easier just to do that. Yeah, I liked it. Now, let me describe to you my thoughts on the first Thor. I just watched the first Thor recently for the first time in a few years. 2 years to be precise, but I watched it and I really liked it. It was a decent movie about Thor. And it works on its own terms. It's one of those, I think Honest Trailers got it right when they said, in a world where we had great superhero movies and really bad superhero movies, it's a superhero movie that is just okay. Even though I think it's a little better than just okay, because they have to handle, Thor, which is a pretty out there sort of concept. I mean, people are used to the idea of a guy in a metal suit or a giant green monster, and Captain America is plausible, but then you have this guy who's a god with a hammer, and then his powers get taken away. It's just so weird and out there. But the first Thor works, despite, some issues that I have with it. Some of those issues do return in Thor the Dark World, but I can safely say that Thor the Dark World is a worthy successor of Thor. In fact, I think in some ways it's better. And it's a good, decent enough follow-up after Iron Man 3 and the Avengers. I mean, I'm not expecting it to be on the level of the Avengers, and I haven't seen Iron Man 3 since it premiered on the big screen, so I can't say too much how I feel about it. I think Iron Man 3 might be slightly better because it takes bigger risks, I want to say. But I think Iron Man can afford to take risks because Iron Man has been a character, has been in the movie since 2008, so people are willing to, have their worldviews change a little bit. With Thor, you gotta have more structure to it, or at least a more defined thing. I can't really say, it's gotta be more basic. Thor, the Dark World, basically goes down like this. There's these dark elves, they have this magical thing, and magical things happen because, let's face it, do you really care? I'm not saying it's bad or anything, but the villain's kind of generic. But he's not a terrible villain, he's just generic. And the first act of the film kind of suffers through just exposition, narrated by Anthony Hopkins. And the scenes on Earth, man, oh my god. If you couldn't stand Kat Dennings in Thor, you really can't stand her in this one. I never really minded her in the first Thor, but in this film where things are trying to be a little more serious, and yeah, there's some comedic things going on occasionally, but you don't really need her, and she just gets really on your nerves. I don't mean to blast her as a performer or anything. I blame the producers, I blame the writers. That's who I blame it on. Can't blame it on her. She's taking a paycheck. I would have done the same thing. So, in this one we have Loki. He's in the Asgardian prison, still bitter about what has happened over in the course of Thor and the Avengers. He blames it on everybody he can but himself. And I really have to say Tom Hiddleston steps it up in this one. I'm not saying he did a poor job in the other two movies, but you really see him as full-fledged what this character truly needs to be, and that is the Marvel Cinematic Universe's version of the Joker. I'm not saying he's on the level of Heath Ledger or anything, but he works for those movies, and you just puts a smile on your face when you see him in one of those movies, and he really steals the show. Chris Hemsworth is good as Thor. Even if you don't like him, or like the character of Thor, he's good as Thor. Not much else you can ask for, and I think he works well as a character. He wears the costume well. That's half the battle with these superhero movies, that you have to wear the costume well, and he wears it well, and he does the dialogue. Oh yes, Loki, I am Thor of Asgard, my brother. He does that really well. Idris Elba is given more to do. He has more action scene. He has an action scene in this movie. It doesn't last very long, but he has an action scene. Lady Sif and the Warriors 3, they're not given much to do except it's like, hey, we'll cover you, Thor. Oh, thank you. That's it. Odin. Anthony Hopkins is Odin. Anthony Hopkins is Odin. That's all I really need to say about that. The action scenes were really ramped up in this one, which that's what I really wanted. That's what I was lacking in the first Thor, was that I felt the action scenes were somewhat lacking because they had to concentrate on the story, trying to develop Thor as a vulnerable character. Because, I mean, he's a god. How do you develop that as a vulnerable character? It's pretty hard. And they do it well, and he continues his arc, being conflicted because he really doesn't want to be king of Asgard. He wants to be a protector, but he can't do it on the seat of the throne. Part of that has to do with, his love interest, Jane Foster, and part of that has to do with the fact maybe his own insecurities as being a king. They try to... let me talk about Natalie Portman first. She's just too attractive for this character. I know that sounds really sexist or whatever you want to call it, but you're trying to have me believe that she's a scientist, and she's just like, she's too, my mom said it best, she's just too perfect looking in this movie, and all she is just a vessel for the bad guy's thing to go in, because apparently she catches the ether, as they call it in the movie. It's the power that Malekith, or I forgot the character's name, the villain needs the power, or whatever, and that's all she was really there for. And there's another thing where you have Lady Sif, played by Jamie Alexander, who was rumored a few days ago to play Wonder Woman, which I would look forward to that. She is it's like a thing with Thor-ish. Not really. It's noticeable that they cut out scenes. And that's where this film suffers, is just kind of underdeveloped certain things. But that doesn't bother me as much as the Earth scenes and Kat Dennings scenes. But the action scenes and a lot of the scenes that happen on Asgard and the drama between Loki and Thor and Loki and his dad. Thor and his dad. It works out well. And it turns out to be a pretty decent, addition to the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Is it as great as the first Iron Man? No. Is it on the level of the Avengers? No. But is it as bad as Iron Man 2? No. It's a good movie. It's a good enough movie where if you want to go for a matinee or something, or you just want to be mildly entertained, and, if you like these characters, then I'd recommend it. I really liked it. I liked it better than the first one, and I look forward to what's in store for the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Now, for the end credits scene, definitely stay for the mid-credits scene, but the end credits scene, the very end credits scene is kind of just, it exists. So I'll check you guys out later.